As Mong'are was announcing his running mate, Phillip Murgor, was pulling out of the presidential race. Murgor, who was running on United Democratic Movement Party ticket, cited his too late entry into the race, failure by the electoral agency to tame early campaigns, and the failure by the Inspector General of Police, Joseph Boinett, to assign him bodyguards. Murgor, who had promised to save the country from choking corruption, politics of ethnic exclusion and economic mismanagement, also blamed negative ethnicity and poor media coverage for his decision to pull off the race, which was only 3 months to the finish line. All right, we want to talk more about that pulling out and unveiling of the running mate by Senator Mong'are. Joining me in studio now to talk more about this is Electoral. He's a political analyst. Thank you for making time for us. Let's begin with Mr. Murgor, Philip. What do you make of those reasons he gave as reasons for bailing out?
I think if you look at the three main reasons he gave, you'd probably appreciate the fact that Kenyan politics is not yet ready for a politician who is issue-based. And it's important to go beyond that and look at him critically as a candidate who had no chance in the first place. I agree with him to the extent that he says that Kenyans are conditioned, to accept politicians who dish a lot of money. And of course, that has some undertones of corruption. And the fact that he's come out saying that his main agenda is to fight corruption and negative ethnicity probably puts him at a very awkward situation when he has to depend on corrupt money to sustain his campaign. But that is the nature of Kenyan politics. But at least to situate the whole withdrawal broadly, you realize that from the word go, I don't think he had a chance simply because in as much as most Kenyans would want corruption fought, you must have been with Kenyans. Politics is about distribution of resources. So you cannot just emerge from somewhere and say that you are the guy. You must have been doing something. And therefore, when he says that he declared his candidature late, he's actually saying that he has been doing nothing to warrant that seriousness that is given to politicians. Because ultimately, as people who vote, we probably want to look at somebody who has done something. But in the public, apart from the brief stint he had as the public prosecutor, I don't think he's done much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he's talked about long reflection preceding his decision and that he made public. But the political landscape in Kenya has largely not changed. Things have been as he's partly described in the reasons that made him withdraw. So what do you think was that final straw that said, let me bolt? Because the things he's saying, it's not like this just began to happen after he, announced he was going to vie.
I think the main thing is, if you look at our politics is local. I don't want to use the word tribal. But by local, it simply means that you must be belonging somewhere. And unfortunately, you must be belonging to a tribe. And it becomes a lot more difficult if you are this independent candidate or this refreshing candidate like he is, who is coming with new ideas of doing things, yet there's a tribal kingpin from your community.
Yes.
Then it becomes very difficult for you because now you have forces that are fighting you, forces that will brand you as a traitor. And if you compare Honorable Kennedy Mong'are and Phillip Murgor, I think no one will bother about Mong'are. He can actually go all the way and lose. But for Murgor, because he's coming out as somebody who is trying to antagonize an established tribal kingpin who is deeply entrenched in Jubilee, and of course, anything that destabilizes William Ruto is probably seen as something that is destabilizing the Jubilee.
Seen as an enemy.
Yes, as an enemy of sorts.
Okay. Finally, Mong'are, Kennedy, Senator, what do you make of his candidature? He's already now gone ahead to unveil a running mate.
I think I like Mong'are, and unlike Phillip Murgor, Mong'are is coming from, a player who has been in the field. He has been doing something in the political front. If it's a question of distribution of resources in the society, which politics is all about, he's been part and parcel of it. And if you look at his political career, he's been fairly consistent. He has always gone against the grain. I think he's one politician who has been swimming upstream and he's been succeeding. If you look at the wave in Kisii in the last few years, he has gone against that wave and he has won. Now, to use that and say that he's a serious presidential candidate is a bit difficult, simply because there is another element that Phillip Murgor has mentioned, resources. that for you to mount a serious presidential campaign, you must, first of all, be in a party that fields, parliamentary aspirants in the bulk of this country, in which case you'll be assured of agents in this country. And I'm not so sure that Okongo has that kind of financial muscle, and that is his main undoing. But as a candidate, I think he's packaging himself very well, and moving forward, I think there is a possibility that he will be a force to reckon with. Not in this election, but maybe in future.
So what do you think drives candidates like him, who most will stand and say they have no chance on earth to win? What do you think drives them running a race that they know ends in losing?
One thing about politics is that you must have a brand name. You must come with that brand that is easily, acceptable and probably well known, which I'm not so sure Murgor had, but Okongo is establishing that.
Okay.
And it simply tells you that he's looking at establishing himself so that in future, guys can refer to him as this political candidate who defied ODM and who defied the Jubilee wave, and had a sizable, chunk of the electorate from Kisii. Even Murgor has hinted that he will try and do something in 2022. But I think it begins with being part and parcel of the playing field. He has to try somewhere. Starting at the presidential level is in itself too ambitious. And of course, I don't think any Kenyan would take you seriously if you want to say that as a president, you're going to fight corruption. No. Uhuru himself said that it is a lot more difficult. And I think this thing has to come down to the legislative level. Parliament. So why can't we start speaking of individual MPs? And if you're serious about fighting corruption and negative ethnicity, should have started somewhere by being a representative of the people, by going to Parliament, and we see the kind of pieces of legislation that is going to front to handle corruption.
Okay. And then you have the principals NASA at the coast, that announcement expected on who will be the flag bearer and the running mate. Do you expect any surprises, or are you of the school of thought that there is either Raila or Raila as the presidential candidate?
I don't think I'm expecting any surprises. And I'll say this, and I've said this before, that any politician or political analyst worth his salt knows that it's going to be Raila Kalonzo against Uhuru Ruto. Yeah, and if NASA was to do anything outside that, it will be a lot more difficult for them, because then they would be starting from scratch. If it is Raila, Kalonzo, Uhuru, Ruto, at least NASA has a chance, for the simple reason that they know the mistakes that they made in 2013. And all they have to do is to work on those mistakes. And one of the key things is that they have to have agents, even in regions that they are not popular, just to ensure that there is sanity in the electoral process. Now, introducing any other dynamic would make it a lot more difficult.
But wouldn't it be the same casts,
Yeah, it would be the same cast. But and politics is about failure, They were not in government, so no one is going to judge them harshly on what they've not done. And that is what Jubilee has to struggle with, that people are going to look at Jubilee in terms of, you went into office promising to do this, you did not.
And that's why the president perhaps is launching all of these projects to show we have done.
Yes. So the president has to do a lot to show people that he actually succeeded in what he promised. And I don't think it's easier like people want to believe, because I don't think they've done much, but they've done quite something.
All right, so two candidates who are not talked about much were Wetangula Moses, he's a principal, in NASA, and also Mudavadi. So what kind of an arrangement, if in your view it would be Raila, Kalonzo as the ticket holders, what would satisfy these two?
I think from where I sit, what I know Mudavadi is looking for is to get Jubilee out of power. I don't think he's preoccupied with
for the sake of being a good guy, or to gain what as an individual?
No, I mean, if you look at what happened to him in 2013 and the fact that if he goes it alone, he doesn't stand a chance. Now, if Davadi is the NASA presidential candidate, I don't think they will be as strong as Kalonzo Raila, for the simple reason that they know the mistakes they have to handle if it is Kalonzo Raila. But I don't think they can predict how far they need to stretch their campaign and how efficient they need to be if they are to have Mudavadi. Okay. And for Wetangula, I don't think he's even in any of the tickets. Whatever combinations, I'm not seeing him in any.
In any?
Yes.
All right, many thanks. Has been a pleasure having you with us and for your sentiments. Owila